while I am sort of harping or talking a lot about Alicia's strengths and the possibilities, I do think that Smilla is the favorite in this fight. For me, my feeling is like probably 70% win. But, the small gloves and Allycia is no tomato can. Anything can happen. Greatness is not great if it's easy. It's just not. It's just like, it's easy. Greatness is great because it's not easy. And if you want something extraordinary, you have to do more than ordinary. You have to suffer. You have to put in more work than anyone else. You have to do it harder and smarter and better than your competition and the people around you. And it sucks.
Welcome to the Science of Building Champions podcast, where your host, Don Heatrick, chats with top-level fighters and coaches, diving into their stories to discover what makes champions.
Matt Lucas. So to set the scene now, you spent most of the last decade in Thailand. You've been a fight photographer, a cornerman, a fighter, an author, a commentator on shows like Max Muay Thai and FetX Fight Night. You're a podcast host and now a social media influencer and director of public relations at the FetX Training Center. So I know, your perspective on the Muay Thai scene is phenomenal. I'm really looking forward to learning from you today.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's about everything. I've probably done a few more things, maybe mop some bathrooms as well, but we'll save those high accolades for later.
And you know what? That's something. I mean, we're kind of right off the bat there. The way you kind of express that is that there are things you're doing now, and it started somewhere completely different and at a lot lower level, and it's like bridging that gap. And I love that you talk about that on social media, online for fighters, because I know just recently I saw you were talking about how there are levels to Muay Thai performance and the competition that you can expect to enter into, and that you've got to kind of serve your time at these sort of relevant areas. But I'd love to hear how that mapped out for you then, where you started in Muay Thai. How did you get started in it, and how did you end up doing what you're doing now?
Well, I came into the sport as an active athlete. I saw a fight. I wanted to fight. It was the era of Fight Club, and how much can you know about yourself if you've never gotten into a fight? So I just got in there, tried it out, and I wasn't going to school. I didn't really have a career at the time. So I threw myself into the sport. I took Thai language classes. Then I took multiple trips to Thailand. My career as an athlete was okay. It wasn't great. It wasn't shit. I think that I definitely hit a lot of roadblocks with promoting myself, with understanding the different levels, with wanting to probably get ahead faster than I actually was. All pretty normal problems, to be honest. But because there wasn't the information out there, I would assume this as well, having been in the same basic era as me. The information for athletes now is way more. So it's a lot easier to understand where you are. And so anyways, my fighting career sort of petered out. And then I moved to Thailand 8 years ago, and I did some fighting still, not anything great. I was mid 30s or early 30s. And I started working at FA Group. I got a job at Max Muay Thai. And I had a shitty little camera, and that I bought with the last bit of my savings. And I said, I'll just take some photos. And then I started posting them, and I realized I was real shit at photography. So I decided I would just take this one photo over and over and over. So for about a year or two, I took these very static images. You can see basically this image of stamp behind me is a replica of the style that I did. And then I'd write little documentary blurbs on the athlete, like, oh, this is stamped, blah, 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 blah. I would maybe interview them. And then once I got that format down, I built into other styles of content and other styles of interviews and more sort of information that I could build.
Yeah. And so you stuck with the more static shots. So I mean, I've dabbled with trying to be at ringside and take photos. It's really tricky. I mean, you have to know your settings to capture speed in potentially sort of low light conditions and all this kind of stuff. But it's also having the eye to anticipate when to take the picture, isn't it? And I think if you've got experience in the sport, it does help you be a better photographer to catch those moments.
Yes. So there's basically, I would say, two things that help with ringside photography. One is, like you said, is having an eye for the timing. And the second is basically having a pretty fast shutter speed, having a equipment to a certain level. And then it's a little bit of spray and pray. And then the real art of it comes in the editing, in picking like, okay, I took 5 shots of, Sexton sitting by the ringside. Okay, this one is going to be the best one, and doing slight edits to that. So it's more in picking the photo and to some degree composing it as well.
Yeah. I mean, these days with digital photography and software as well, there are certain things we can do to kind of rescue a picture that would otherwise be chucked to the side. We get to cheat these days. It certainly wouldn't be something I'd do with film. It'd cost a fortune, wouldn't it, with all the scrap?
Yeah, I'm very lucky that I've been able to grow with the digital world, because if I had to pay for my own film and stuff, I would not be able to get to where I am, because the learning curve for me was like very, very steep. And for me to take good photos, to make good quality content, it took me a long time, a lot of trial and error. And luckily, because you can do so much stuff that is basically thrown away, you can repeat the process very quickly and get to a sufficient level of quality.
Yeah, that kind of trial and error process, it's important in everything, isn't it? Being willing to kind of make mistakes and be like, this doesn't all have to be perfect. I've got to try and kind of hone it along the way. And I'd certainly see that with fighters, that those with that sort of attitude to their training as well are the ones that kind of go the furthest, because they're always working, and not worried about mistakes. They're kind of looking at mistakes, but learning from them and trying to improve themselves. I'd love to know, what would you say would be the most important traits or behaviors that you've seen with foreign fighters training in Thailand for them to be successful there in Thailand?
I think it's a few different factors. I think one, you have to be able to deal with the repetition, because I do think that there is a certain amount of quantity that is necessary to have quality. You cannot expect to kick once and to do it perfectly. Even if you have amazing instruction, there's a certain amount of quantity in terms of reps that you need to do in order to have quality output. If, for instance, you have a very, very good strength and conditioning coach who teaches you amazing form, you cannot go and deadlift 10 pounds to 100 pounds in 5 times. It's just impossible. So I think we need to think about that in the same regard for when we're fighting. There's a certain amount of repetition that is necessary to build. I think that a lot of successful athletes out here are also very patient. That goes into the repetition. You just have to bear it. And the problem with the patience part is you don't know the outcome. You might do all this work and never get anywhere. But you have to, at the same time, believe that you will get somewhere, that all this work is worthwhile. If we go back to the deadlifting analogy, you have to believe that at some point you can lift more weight. Otherwise, why are you lifting to begin with? Okay, yeah, maybe you want to lift for fun, but if you want to be serious, if you want to be a champion, you need to believe that you can lift more, even if your body may give out at some point.
Yeah, that growth mindset, The belief that you're kind of doing this for its own purpose to get better rather than whatever title it is you're ultimately aiming at. Is kind of like, yeah, it's nice if that situation comes around and it's a good long-term aim to have. But if you're kind of getting better each day, they're the people that stay in the game long enough to actually get the title in the long run anyway, aren't they?
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I remember a great clip with Mike Tyson. He has all of his belts laid out in front of him, and he's like, what is this? What is this shit? What does this mean anymore? And I think that's also important to put things into perspective. You know, your goal now, when you reach it, you might not feel amazing about it. You might feel just sort of blah. I remember I ran a marathon. One of my goals was, I'm going to run a marathon. And I did it in 4 hours. I said to myself, oh, good job, Matt Lucas. I walked across the line and I said, I'm never doing that again. And that was it. You know, I hit my goal, and there wasn't some sort of glorious feeling. It was more, I accomplished this. Now what?
Yeah.
I think that's important for athletes to realize as well, especially because the sport can be pretty volatile in terms of how long you're going to be in it.
And I think that's a really good point you've made there as well, that the mental attributes that I guess you build by doing the physical training, whatever you're doing, that stuff, that self-belief that you can actually work at something long enough to achieve it, whether that's a goal like I continue with, or whether it's like I've achieved that, I moved on to something else. It's a transferable skill and a belief in yourself that you can take into whatever else you choose to do. And I mean, you're a really great example of that. All these different things you've done.
Yeah, I think so. You know, I've been very, very lucky, I think, to have a lot of these opportunities. At the same time, I put myself in positions to be able to maximize on things, and to, you know, there's a compounding effect to things. So my skill in photography, my skill in writing, plus my knowledge of Muay Thai, it makes me a very good asset. Then I put, you know, the knowledge of cornering, the knowledge of management, being able to do public speaking, and each skill compounds on each other and develops me. In the same way you might talk about an athlete, you know, an athlete, a fighter that can jab. Oh, good, you can jab. Okay, now you can cross. Okay, that makes your jab more valuable. And it makes your cross more valuable because now you can 1, 2. You can knee. Okay, you can knee from different distances. Okay, now you're dangerous. You're a weapon.
Yeah. Great analogy. Love all that. And you're speaking more as well now about sort of Muay Thai specific performance. I'd love now, it feels like the right moment to kind of speak about Smilla, Sundell and Allycia Rodrigues, that fight, and kind of what your take is on, I mean, because Alicia's coming up in weight, isn't she? So that, yeah. I mean, Smilla's a tall, rangy fighter in her own category anyway, and Alicia's coming up in weight to fight her. I'd love to know what your thoughts would be on how both fighters could either win or lose this fight. What would that look like for you?
Well, I think it's awesome that Allycia is stepping up. I have a lot of respect for her. She's an amazing athlete, and I've known her for a number of years. I remember seeing her back in 2019 and being like, I think you're going to go somewhere. And obviously she did. She beat Stamp for one of the titles. She has had a lot of experience and obviously took time off, COVID, baby, but is now getting back into it. She has, you know, a pretty wide, stocky frame and is shorter than me. So I'm 5'8" on a good day. You know, some people might say I'm 5'7" and, you know, 9'8", you know, 9'10" or so, but you know, I'm 5'8". So, and Smilla is a little taller than me. So I think it's going to be hard in terms of reach for Allycia. That is obviously the first problem. For Allycia as well, it's going to be an issue of getting into the right distance. I know that's something that you have talked a lot about, is sort of distance management. You said there's basically 4 ranges, correct?
Yeah, well, that's how I like to break it down. Yeah, I see Muay Thai as having long range where you can only just reach with a kick, not with a punch. And then medium range, I'd say, is like punching range where the straight punches can reach. Close range is then hooks, uppercuts, elbows, that kind of knees, that kind of range. And then finally clinch, where you've physically got hold of them and you're right in each other's space. And I see the fight kind of playing out in those discrete areas. And I like to break it down personally that way, because I see certain ranges as taking away certain weapons and bringing others in, making those more favorable. And they're kind of discrete points that if you're stronger at a particular range, regardless of what your choice of techniques are, you can kind of just play the game on a broad spectrum in those ranges that suit you better and your opponent less. And it simplifies the process a lot more. And then you can kind of layer onto it more sophistication, if you like. But yeah, that's how I tend to see it.
Yeah, and I think that is a good sort of system to think about. So if we apply it to Smilla and Allycia, Smilla's punching range is going to be Alicia's kicking range. Yeah. And Smilla's kicking range is going to be pretty far for Allycia. That's like her normal non-exchange range. You know, Smilla's mid-range would probably be her long knees. And that is, you know, that's still around Alicia's punching range. So like you punch and you eat a knee, and it might hit Smilla, or it might not if she does a little bit of a lean back as she knees. And then the close range, you know, okay, there I think Smilla will be able to drop down into the clinch and just hover over her, similar to someone like Diesel Noy would hover over one of his opponents. So I think it's going to be a difficult fight for Allycia, but I do think if she is able to manage that range, you know, that's short, stocky frame, she can use a typical Muay Mat, heavy-handed style, leg kick the shit out of Smilla, punch a body. But it's about, I think, the range management, you know, staying maybe far enough away from the knees that she can still sort of punch and leg kick, but not so close that she gets kneed or jabbed too much.
Yeah. It's like you say, that those ranges, and I think that this is going to make this fight really interesting because of the change in weight class. So that automatically kind of changes the ranges that you'd expect your opponents to have anyway, as like a normative level. But the fact that Smilla's just so tall and rangy, even for her weight class, it makes it a real unknown quantity for Allycia, and one that she's going to. I mean, I'm sure she's got training partners. She's trying to simulate it, but in real time in a fight, it's going to be something to adjust to on the fly. That's a new. It's almost like I have an analogy of like trying to park a new car in a parking space when it's a completely different size to what you're used to. It takes some time to figure it out, and she's going to have to do that on the fly in the fight. And it's like you say, Smilla's range, with some of the techniques she can throw at different ranges, are just different to everybody else. I mean, when she was fighting Jackie Buntan, and Jackie had a knee guard on and was leaning away and was feeling like, I should be safe. And she really wasn't, because Smilla's telescopic limbs were still catching her. And it was like, I don't know what to do about this. She had to figure it out on the fly under pressure. And I think that's something that Alicia's she's either prepared really well for it, or it's going to be something like, I've got to be a really adaptable fighter and figure this out, because normal movements that would get me out of range of something really doesn't now. And there's a different range of weapons coming in at a different range that I wasn't expecting.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. On Alicia's side, she does have some very good training partners like Barbara Aguera, who is the WBC Muay Thai world champion. She beat Joanne Law over at Rebellion not too long ago. Barbara is a little shorter than Smilla, but has that sort of lanky build to her. So that will help Allycia for sure. And to some extent, Barbara fights not totally similar style, but it's adjacent, I would say. So that will help. But, it is hard to figure things out on the fly. To Alicia's credit, though, she does have 5 rounds. So, and the Phuket Fight Club style starts off slow and then builds up. If you remember the fight between Allycia and Stamp, the Allycia really built up in the later rounds and started to dominate, I feel, pretty securely, which got her the win there. So there is that, there is that factor as well.
Yeah. And I think the discussion really on the proportions of the athletes is really, really interesting. So you mentioned like the long limbs. I look at it as like a strength and conditioning coach, the athletic performance side of it, and long-term athlete development, and how different stages of development for both male and female fighters. And you can tell actually when fighters were earlier developers or late developers, it affects their torso to limb lengths. So, for example, Allycia, she's got relatively short limbs compared to her torso. So she was like an early developer. Whereas Smilla, she's got long limbs for her torso length in ratio. So she would have been a later developer. And in terms of coordination and development, someone who's gone through puberty kind of earlier and had their body change size on them less tends to be better coordinated and finds balance and that easier than someone who's gone through a massive growth spurt and literally, every day they woke up and their kind of limbs were touching a different range of motion. Their arms were longer than yesterday, and you've got to recalibrate and figure out again how do I park this car? It's bigger than yesterday, and it makes coordination a lot more challenging. And also with Smilla being younger, there's all those like you say about the repetitions. So it's repetitions with your frame and your balance, and so I see Allycia as potentially, especially because she's come up in weight class, she's already a muscular kind of fighter. She's going to put on some more lean mass, I'm sure, to make weight for this. No, it won't be unproductive fat mass she's put on. So she's going to be stronger and solid. Lower center of gravity for balance and stability, very good coordination. Where Smilla, she's a higher center of gravity, a bit more easy to topple over. Potentially that could be somewhere as well that Allycia could find. She might have to go through the kill zone in ranges, if you like, where it can't quite reach. It's like, but when she gets in close, she might find even, for example, that, like you're saying about chopping the legs and perhaps battering the body to reach the head and all that kind of stuff. But I think even the opportunity to catch Smilla's leg and upend her or just unbalance her and perhaps throw her off mentally that way as well, if she's continually having to pick herself up, that could be quite a challenge as well. So I think it's going to be a really interesting fight to watch.
Yeah, I think it will be good. While I am sort of harping or talking a lot about Alicia's strengths and the possibilities, I do think that Smilla is the favorite in this fight. For me, my feeling is like probably 70% win. But, the small gloves and Allycia is no tomato can. Anything can happen. But I do think I'm pretty confident in Smilla's abilities and her past performances that she's going to be able to probably dominate this fight. When she fought Jackie, it looked like a killing spree. She murdered Jackie, just murdered. And to be honest, it's a real testament to Jackie's toughness that she was able to, accept that barrage of jabs to the face. And I was like, oh no, stop, don't, no more.
Yeah, that was a tough fight. That really was. I mean, you mentioned the little gloves there, and of course, for someone like Smilla with a long range and those little gloves on, she can do some damage with those punches she's got. How do you see the small gloves affecting how fighters should prepare for their fights in training, but also in the actual fight itself?
Well, I think that the small gloves has opened up things in a lot of good and bad ways, just as we'll talk about it generally. I like the small gloves with smaller fighters. So athletes that are maybe 60 kilos and less, small gloves makes it way more exciting. Female athletes can damage each other. They can knock each other out. The punches and, even 10-ounce gloves, 8-ounce gloves, they don't feel the same. They don't do the same amount of damage. And now women and smaller athletes can do significant damage. Like maybe, you compare like the MMA gloves on a 52 kilo athlete and like, 8-ounce gloves on a 65 or 70 kilo athlete. I would say it looks about the same, and it makes a lot of these lighter weight classes more interesting, especially because they're so light. Their movements are very fast. They can be very technical. So I think that's one of the very positive things that One Lumpini has with some of the lighter guys. In terms of the practical applications, the guard totally needs to change. There's a decent amount more hand breakages. There's also, head movements and just general wear and tear. So I recently cornered River Daz. He fought Nantiket PK Sanchai at One Lumpini 2 weeks ago. And it was in small gloves. It was at like 65 kilos. And just afterwards, River's face, it was like a fucking car wreck. It looked pretty barbaric. That was also because he walked into a lot of elbows, but there's just more damage facially and to the body because of these small gloves, especially because you have high level strikers that already know what they're doing, pounding away at each other. Whereas in a sport like, say, MMA, I would say the striking is not as developed, and it's developed in other ways. So you're actually less likely to take as many strikes as you are in a Muay Thai fight with MMA gloves.
Yeah. Just like you could argue the other way, we as a Muay Thai fighter, you're sharing your distribution amongst the other 8 weapons that you've got. Whereas if you're like a Western boxer in just the small gloves, it'd be even worse. That would, yeah. Now we're getting into bare knuckle territory there, aren't we?
Yeah. That it is worth looking at in terms of how athletes are being damaged and what the recovery is, and, concussions and all that sort of stuff. Because, One Championship and One Lumpini are relatively new. It's been a year or two. And so there, specifically for One Lumpini, it's been about a year. So the long-term effects of all of this concussion, impact rather, we don't know it yet. And the sport in general, in terms of medical stuff, has not really been reviewed that thoroughly. It's just like, oh yeah, oh yeah, that guy's punch drunk. Whereas, there might be other lighter forms of damage that happen. But, it's also, there's always a little bit of a trade-off, because the small gloves has brought so much exposure to the sport and money and attention, and the sport desperately needed it. So, I don't know. I don't know like which way.
Yeah. It kind of feels like a wait and see how it all sort of pans out for everybody there. But you also mentioned about the sport needing it, and of course, the pandemic, all of this has kind of happened, and it felt like that's had to fast track how Muay Thai promotions work, how the gyms kind of operate. The old sort of traditional way of relying on the betting side of things, all of that kind of side, of course, just fell away along with everything else. And you've kind of been sat there seeing everything from beforehand, through the pandemic, and now afterwards. How does that look for you now in terms of where it's come from and where it's gone to, and where you perhaps see it going in the future?
Yeah, I think that, to my credit, pat myself on the back here, Matt Lucas, my fortune telling abilities, 100% correct about 23% of the time. I saw the development of the entertainment side of the sport, and that's where the sport is going. If you see any major promotion now in Thailand, is 3 rounds, and it's geared towards entertainment. It's actually more common in Western countries to have 5-round fights, like say Rebellion Muay Thai or Lion Fight, which has longer fights. That said, there is still the gambling element that is not going to go away. It's always going to be there. I think the real growth in the sport is in this entertainment side. And it's also in developing the infrastructure of the sport. So if we look at other sports like, say, American football or, football/soccer, the way everything is built around the sport is a lot more developed than in Muay Thai, which previously was very, very niche. But now we have these bigger organizations like One Championship that are infusing a lot of professionalism into the athletes, into the gyms, into the media. So I think that is probably the way things are going. And I assume in the next 3 years or so, if you are a 20-year-old athlete in Muay Thai, you can have a sustainable career into your 30s.
Nice. Oh, yeah. I like the sound of that. It's since my involvement in Muay Thai, I've always looked at it and gone, this is just the best striking sport ever, but it doesn't get the recognition it needs. And it suddenly feels like now that is starting to change. That seesaw is tipping, and we're starting to see the opportunities come in so that people can actually take this more seriously if they choose to, as well as just encouraging lots of people just to do it for health and fitness and all the rest of it. But to actually have people be able to decide, I want to try and make a career out of this, not just a hobby. I actually want to do this for real and see how far I can go. It's really quite exciting to see that evolution. I'm interested to know what you've seen perhaps behind the scenes, Matt, with the training sort of progress and methods used. Has that evolved as a result of the influx of perhaps more Western fighters, even in Thailand?
I would say yes. I would say it's not an even development, but it is a development. Now most gyms will have some sort of strength and conditioning program, whether it's that good or not. There's some sort of level of recognition about it. And in the same way, there's now a recognition of like supplements and taking some sort of vitamins or supplements and nutrition and things like that. Again, a lot of the development in Thailand is very like organic because they basically need to see this works and this works repeatedly. Then they'll be like, we'll try it. But it's very hard for successful Westerners to come in and be like, oh, actually, you should do things this way. They'll be like, this way has been working for us for so long. If we switch, we might cause errors in our programming, in what we have going on. And there's money, there's things at stake here. Deviating is even slightly could be a costly mistake. So I think that is a little bit of the battle. And, Mr. Wong recently, maybe a few months ago, did a big speech about how the Thai champions are all dying, basically. There's hardly any Thai champions left. He attributes it to laziness and other things. He also attributes it to foreigners' drive, their passion for the sport. And I understand that. At the same time, we're seeing a few more Thais get into the sport, want to fight, obviously with big paydays like one Lumpini, which gives out, you know, a $10,000 bonus if you knock out your opponent, which, you know, $10,000 that is not a lot of sticky rice. That is a lot of fucking hamburgers out here.
Yeah. It brings a talent pool in as well, doesn't it? Once there's some more money in there. So it does start to level out, I guess, like the athletic attributes that different people have got, because now we're not just seeing only the ones that are really passionate and interested in here. There's a lot more. You've just got a lot more coming into the funnel, haven't you? And you can filter out, even out of foreigners, more that are going to be performing better because of that funnel effect. But yeah, but at the same time, you then start looking for what are those marginal gains that are actually going to separate me from everybody else, because now there is so many others all with the same goal I've got. And if I can get more of these things in alignment, then I stand a better chance of actually reaching as far as I really could do personally. Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough too, because, you know, even now the economics of it are difficult, because say I fight at one Lumpini for $2,000, usually because of the damage, I can fight only every 2 months. So I fight every 2 months for $2,000 without the gym taking out their normal 50%. That's $1,000 a month, which is okay living out here in Thailand, but is not going to progress you in your career. So that means I have to knock my opponent the fuck out. And if I don't, then I haven't gotten ahead. In order to knock out my opponent, I may be taking risks and chances that could hurt me short and long term in order to get this sort of lifeline to extend my career 6 months, but at what cost, I don't know. So I think it's a pretty volatile time as well for the athletes that are starting to develop, because they don't really know how long they can last in terms of the damage. And then also they need the money, because if they don't get the money, then it's like, you know, I trained for 2 or 3 months and I could have just, you know, fought a regular fight without taking all this damage. So it's difficult. I'm not saying one championship is bad or anything, but I am saying there's economic considerations to take into account as well.
Yeah, certainly. Thanks for sharing that. That's a really good kind of insight into how the fighters are actually considering weighing up all of these options. Because you definitely see it, of course, with what's encouraged in terms of the rule set, and that it's 3 rounds, so it's higher intensity, but also there is way more just what I'd call aggressive fight styles, where they're just coming forwards and they're looking for that knockout, probably for this exact reason, regardless if that's even their kind of attributes and skill level is geared that way. They might be, I mean, like as I'd classify them, I have 4 of those as well that I kind of drop in. There's aggressive, which is what we're seeing a lot more of. Yeah. Elusive, where they're making things miss, and evasive there. And then you've got counter fighters, and then tricky fighters that are kind of feinting and doing all these kind of tricky things. But the aggressive head-to-head rams butting their heads together and the hardest head wins. We're seeing far more of that, of course.
Yeah, it's something I make a comparison a lot to, is a lot of the fights now are like demolition derbies. It's just cars crashing. And there is some level of skill involved, but there's also a decent amount of luck and just having a certain build, a durable car. Whereas, you know, to some degree, classic Muay Thai or stadium Muay Thai is a bit more like F1 racing. Everyone has cars and they're definitely souped up as much as possible, but it's, you know, there's a certain level of technique and driving that's involved that I don't necessarily see in one Lumpini at this point. But, you know, as we develop, maybe we'll see more of that.
Yeah. It's as with everything, it feels like there's kind of that pendulum swinging, isn't there? And it's like, where are we on that swing at the moment? And it'll probably turn around. Well, I think what will happen is we'll probably end up with too many fights that look the same, and people will be like, oh, I really enjoy the fights where there was that elusive, tricky fighter who was making him miss and then tagging him and, you know, clowning him a little bit and all this kind of stuff rather than just head to head, poof. But we'll see how all of that evolves. As with anything, it's kind of like the rules and the judging and the rewards kind of dictate the fight style, don't they? And I'm sure that'll be tweaked over time to make it both acceptable longer term for the fighters, but also something that's marketable.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that a lot of it also has to do with the audience education and the audience level. Because right now, what One Championship is doing, they're creating a market. So they need as many punters as possible. To get punters, you need low level of threshold in terms of entry. You just need to get people in the door. And what's going to get people in the door? Just head-on collisions. I don't necessarily see One Championship educating people that much higher than like, oh, we're just cracking people away, which, you know, is it's a strategy on their part. And I definitely understand it. They're looking at this massive untapped market in Asia. They're not necessarily looking to build super dorks everywhere. But for me, that, you know, I have like a little bit of a different approach to the way I do things. And I'm looking to build out super dorks and super educated people, because if you look at other sports like baseball or basketball, you have that one kid that knows everything about all the players and won't shut up about them. And so he influences everyone else in the group. And then he or she is sort of the main producer of content and information, and the sport grows that way. Yeah. So there's also different tactics and strategies around building the sport. And, you know, obviously One Championship has a lot of resources, and, you know, other promotions like RWS do as well. And so everyone's trying to figure out their own path to success.
Yeah. And even the number of rounds being 3 rounds, or when they get the title fights, it's 5 rounds, isn't it? And again, that suddenly changes. It's less of the 2 rams butting heads again. It becomes a little bit more strategic, because it's like, I'm going to have to go 5 rounds like this, rather than now the finish line is in 3, go. It's 5. It's 5. It changes how you have to strategically play that fight.
Yeah, 100%. Going back to when River Daz fought Nantiquet, who, you know, he hadn't fought in a while. I think he fought at Super Champ maybe 2 months ago, but before that was a little bit of a layoff. And we were like, I watched Nantiquet. I was like, oh, he's a good kicker. He's got good timing. He's got good elbows. Okay, River, fucking go. You cannot wait. You have to go and kill him right away. Go, motherfucker. Go, kill him. And because he did that, he basically sprinted across the ring and just was like, He was able to get a knockdown in the first round. That knockdown obviously swayed the fight in his favor massively, but it also took a lot of wind out of Nantiquet's sails, who was maybe a little bit more of a slow starter. And Nantiquet came out with horrendous elbows and sliced up River like, you know, a surgeon, you know, probably a bit better than a Beverly Hills surgeon. Just and at one point he hit River with an elbow, and River, who's from Australia, I think he was like, oh, I'm back in Melbourne. And River was, you know, ice skating all over the ring. But because he'd had such an early start, Nantiquet was like gassed out. It was like, oh, I see Australia. It is very far away. I do not think I can make it. So River was able to, you know, come back together and finish the fight and, you know, have a strong third round to take the win. But if that fight was 5 rounds, you know, okay, you have that early sprint. And then, you know, in round 3, River was, you know, he was fighting on Vegemite alone. He you know, Vegemite and willpower. And, you know, I don't know about the nutritional value of either.
Yeah, there's only so much that's going to help. But the mindset behind the pace that you're setting and knowing what you're physically capable of, how you've trained that. I mean, do you see much difference in the way fighters are actually training in preparation for either a 3-round fight or a 5-round fight, you know, behind the scenes?
I would say no. I would say it's more of a mental shift than in terms of the way things are trained. I do think that it is also because exposed to more classical Muay Thai gyms. That said, a lot of Western athletes will come in and will not train as hard. So I think that can be a problem because they're like, oh, I need to rest and recover. But it's like, bro, you haven't even done like your base level of work. You know, like one of the things I fucking hate is when athletes say, oh, I don't run. Like I think running is very, very important. Very, very important. Especially, I would say, for your first 5 years as an athlete, as a fighter. Oh, your Ognian topic, you want to just do sprints and do jogs in the park? Cool. You've done the running, you've built up that base level of aerobic capacity. Okay, you can work on other things. But so many athletes come in and they don't want to mop the floor. They just want to be the superstar. And it's like, bro, it doesn't work like that, especially in a sport built around the body. You cannot, does not work.
It's those foundation levels, isn't it? And if you haven't built them, you get found out. Eventually, you know, you climb up high, you're not stable as an athlete, as a person. What's interesting about I get that question a lot with people saying, oh, you know, but there's high intensity intervals and all this kind of stuff. It brings something different to the longer steady state stuff that they predominantly do in Thailand. And it's true, but it's like, what proportion of that do you need to get the benefit of some sprints compared to the benefit you still get from your long steady state runs? And it's not, don't chuck the baby out with the bathwater here. You know, it's a really important part of training. And it's probably what's not really understood is the fact that unless you have got that foundation of the long steady state stuff and that foundation capacity, that aerobic capacity, you don't recover from any of your training that well. It's kind of like your quick recharge on your battery cells, not only between techniques and combinations in the fight itself, but between training sessions. If you haven't put your work into building your battery recharge up in the first place, you know, you go back into your next training session, you're still shot not because the running was the issue as such. It's the fact you didn't do the work that the running gave you to build a body that recharges and energizes in time for training twice a day at the intensity you kind of need. So, there's a lot of benefit to this stuff, and it's really down to you to do what you need to do, even if it's like, I don't enjoy this bit. That's true of any job, isn't it? Anything. There's always the bits you don't like doing, but if you understand the purpose of it and what it gives you, then you need that discipline, and that's that discipline to do the stuff that you know you need to do, even though you don't enjoy that part, is really what separates the ones that go as far as they really can do, isn't it?
Yeah, and you know, I think one of the biggest aspects of running and doing a lot of this foundational work is you're doing what's required, and it's not fucking fun. You know, waking up in the morning, getting your ass out of bed to go, you know, basically walk in the hot heat or wherever it is, it's fucking uncomfortable for an hour at the start of your day. That's not fucking fun, you know, and it's not fucking easy. It's long, it's torturous, but it builds up your mind a lot. And I think it, like you said, it builds up your battery. You know, it's a lot easier to go to a gym for 45 minutes and do like a high powered workout and be like, bam, done, you know, than it is to do the long slog. But I think there's some level, I think it's a massive level actually of just marathoning to success.
Yeah. Do you know what, what jumped into my head there, that there's a difference. Even if we take this on a more acute level, let's say you're doing repetitions with a heavy weight. If you're doing like a 5 repetition maximum, that's pretty heavy. The way you fail on that is you kind of like, I'm good for a rep, I'm good for a rep, I'm good for a rep. Oh, that was a little hard. And then it's suddenly like, I can't do the next one, and it just stops. There's no kind of, you just need to be switched on to apply yourself for those reps. But there's no horrible hybrid, grueling, gritty, painful bit where you could be, do I give up today or not? It doesn't happen. It's a go, no go with something that's more endurance based. So even if we took you, say, right, it's 20 reps, for example, let alone a big long run where there's loads of time to mull over, like, this is horrible. I want to stop. I want to stop. How much of a conversation is going on? Yeah. It's like, this hurts. It hurts.
This heavy hitters program. Oh, this bullshit. Bullshit. Fuck you, dog.
But the psychology is there, isn't it? There's time for that little voice to come in and start telling you, you don't like this, do you? This is hurting. You'd really like to stop, wouldn't you? And it's the mental toughness training as well. That is part and parcel of it.
Yeah, and that's where most people stop, is when it starts hurting, and that's why most people fail.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah. One of my, to be honest, Mr. Wong was saying this today, and I took Stamp around on tours in America, and she got some media coverage, and we're sitting in a hotel, and I'm sort of doing some accounting stuff while the journalist is talking to her. And the journalist says, Stamp, what makes you so successful? Stamp sits there and she says, Aton, I can suffer more than other people. That's it. She's like, and I would totally 100 agree with her about that. She's a good athlete. Is she the most gifted I've seen? No. But what she can do is she can suffer through more training and more hardship than a lot of other athletes I've seen. And I think that's what makes her successful.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. The question I ask at the end, and I think you've already answered it there, is like, if you could give one piece of advice to someone to be the best they could be, what would that be? Would you say it's that? It's that persistence to suffer, or would there be something else that would jump out?
Yeah, I think you need patience. You need to put in the reps. You need to be able to, if you want, greatness is not great if it's easy. It's just not. It's just like, it's easy. Greatness is great because it's not easy. And if you want something extraordinary, you have to do more than ordinary. You have to suffer. You have to put in more work than anyone else. You have to do it harder and smarter and better than your competition and the people around you. And it sucks.
Yep. That's it. That's the game you're in. Yeah.
Yep.
And that's where you really find out about yourself. Matt, thank you. Thank you for your time today. And fantastic insight. I'm really excited to see, with this kind of acceleration of how Muay Thai is evolving, and hopefully with a bit of guidance from everybody, it's going to be going in a really good, strong way. It already looks like, the opportunities are there. It's accelerating, and thanks for all the work that you're putting in to help with that side of things too. Yeah,
for sure. I'm excited about the future. I think people like us are in very privileged positions, and we're going to be able to see potentially some big rewards in the foreseeable future. I would say within the next 3 to 5 years, our circumstances are going to be a lot different.
Well, you're seeing what you're seeing, and you're sharing it too. That's awesome. Yeah. Thanks for kind of letting us into some of that. That's a bit of a privileged position as far as all of us outsiders are concerned. It's really great when you give us a little window as to what's going on there. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. I think it's important for the sport, and I guess I'm the dorky kid about the baseball.
The best ones. The best ones.
Yeah, the best ones. Yes. Correct strategy there, sir.
Okay, Matt, I'll let you go for now. And thank you very much for your time, mate.
No worries. Thank you, sir.
Before we wrap up this episode, gear up for a thrilling showdown in the world of Muay Thai. On September the 29th, mark your calendars for an epic clash between two fierce warriors, Smilla Sundell and Allycia Rodrigues, as they face off in a fierce battle for the one Strawweight World Muay Thai title. This epic clash will be streaming live on the One Championship YouTube channel and available on Amazon Prime. But that's not all. If you're hungry for more Muay Thai insights and adventures, be sure to follow Matt Lucas on Instagram at @MattLucasMuayThai. Matt shares his experiences, training tips, and behind-the-scenes moments that every Muay Thai aficionado, and dare I say nerd like me, can appreciate. And as always, you can find relevant links and additional details in our show notes. Thanks for tuning into this episode, and we'll catch you in the next one where we continue to explore the world of Muay Thai.
Thanks for listening. If you found this valuable, please like, subscribe, and share with someone else it could help too. Please give the podcast a review or comment below. We'd love to hear from you. As always, you can visit heatrick.com for more Muay Thai performance podcasts, videos, articles, and guides. Catch you next time.